Pat Kimball, and they are ready and waiting. Can you go ahead and just jump right in at this point? And I'm going to start with you, Dan, if I could, and ask the question that I always ask every guest that I have is what was Dan like as a kid?
Well, let's see. I'd say until I saw Conan the Barbarian, probably a pretty, quiet kid for sure. Definitely was a little bit more on the shy side. Grew up with two older sisters, so early on there wasn't a lot of male influence on me as a little kid. So I was a little more kind of peaceful, chill kid until I had some new neighbors move into the neighborhood, and I saw Conan the Barbarian and Rambo, and we started, being warriors out in the woods and shooting BB guns at each other and having sword fights with sticks and all kinds of stuff that little boys do. So it kind of turned very quickly. And I'd say, the day I saw Conan and Rambo was really the day I became a Marine in my mind.
Nice. So you went from Conan to Marine in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. That was
Did,
a trajectory.
did you have do you have any relatives that were Marines?
No, but the guy who ended up being my recruiter was like an older brother to me. Uh, his younger brother and I were best friends since kindergarten. So when he went into the Marines, uh, in 18, and he went to the first Gulf War, I was maybe 12 or 13 or 14, I can't remember. And he came home with his dress blues, and it was like game over. I was like, oh man, I got it. I got to do it.
Yes. I have two Marine sons, veterans as well. So yeah, and just the look of them, they've really come a long way over history, right? Over time.
For
They've
sure.
really improved quite a bit. Definitely very sharp. So were you studious when you were in school? Did you like school at all?
I'd say I was studious until maybe eighth grade. And then I just, I got into metal music too. So I just wanted to play my guitar. I wanted to stare out the window and dream about doing other things besides school.
Yeah.
I always, my mind always wandered into like
Okay.
coming up with ideas or creating things. So I
Did you
was born
did
in
you
school.
play any sports?
Yeah, I played football, wrestling. Wrestling was my favorite sport. I started wrestling in seventh grade, but actually it was even before then. I was learning when I was probably 10, 11 years old. I started wrestling with some of the local farmers who
Oh,
were
wow.
in the wrestling teams. And then I started in junior high and wrestled all the way through. And did some wrestling in the Marines too.
Yeah, that gives you kind of a little bit of a leg up, right? As far as, when you get into boot camp and you start grappling and all that.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing was in that era before the UFC, everyone looked at all the strikers and all the boxers and the kickboxers as the guys that were the ones not to mess with, not even realizing wrestlers just scoop a couple legs and get them on the ground and have dinner.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I mean, you don't really know if grappling was a thing. I mean, you knew in school that it was an intense sport, but you didn't know the type of foundation that it was going to create down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So let's go move over to you, Pat.
Sure.
And I've got the same questions for you. What were you like as a kid? What was it like for you?
I was kind of precocious when I was a kid. I was the oldest, and I was kind of known for being smart as a young kid. Like I knew a lot of words, right? I read books and different stuff like that. I always knew something, and I wanted people to know that I knew something, sort of deal. And then I got into a little bit of trouble when I was a kid. A little bit of little bit rambunctious maybe, or hyper or whatever, and I didn't have a lot of outlets for that energy. So I would find them, get myself in trouble.
Yeah, that happens, doesn't it? Especially with boys.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's my experience. I have 3 boys of my own, so yeah, that's been my experience.
yeah. So how old are your boys now?
My boys are 24, 20, and 17.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so you've been through it. You understand that.
Yeah, my kids are grown, so
Yep. Yep. Okay. And then your education. Did you like
I made
school?
it. I made it to 10th grade in school, and then I actually ended up getting a GED. I left school a little bit early to pursue work. My son, I said I have a son who's 24. I'm only 42. So the math dictates that he was born when I was still kind of in school, sort of, and so that that just led me out into the workforce a little bit earlier to try and make some money for
And what was it for you, Pat, that made you decide you wanted to join the military and specifically the branch that you chose?
the family. Well, so the Army was actually kind of my second choice, right? I was initially I wanted to join the Marine Corps, and I was actually on the trajectory. I was on the path to do that. Even though I only had a GED, I went to the Marine recruiter like right after my wedding, sort of deal, which is kind of a different story. But I got married, and then I ended up in the recruiter's office really shortly thereafter. And I was like, hey, what do I need to do to join the Marine Corps? And they kind of laid it out for me. With a GED, I would need X number of college credits. Okay, check, we'll do that. So I enrolled in community college, and I started getting those college credits. And then, as I was going through the process to join the Marine Corps, I ended up in the Marine Corps Civilian Liaison's office to sign my contract. And while reading through the contract, you know, what the recruiter told me and what the contract said really line up. And I had a decision to make. And I was like, listen, I'm here for my family. Ultimately, it's not about what I want or a title or getting that Eagle, Globe, and Anchor sort of deal. It's not about a prestige thing at this point. It's about money.
Right.
And so I ended up joining the army.
Did you just get up and walk next door at that point, or did you
Actually,
wait?
no.
Or
I left. MEPS. I left the Marine Corps office, and I was standing out front of the MEPS building, waiting for my wife. My recruiter wouldn't even come and pick me up from Buffalo. So my wife, no, it was awesome. So my wife had to like come and drive to Buffalo to pick me up. And while I was waiting, an Army recruiter came out, and he was talking to me, and he said, you look like you're having a bad day, sort of deal. And I told him kind of what was going on, and he was like, here's my card, give me a call. And so that's how I ended up in the Army.
wow.
He left you at MEPS.
Left me at MEPS. He was like,
I
thought you wanted to be a Marine. I was like, I need to feed my family. And he was
And
like,
you lied to me?
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's why finding good recruiters is so key.
Sure.
And you just don't know what you don't know, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So Dan, same question goes for you. Now, we talked about the fact that you already knew you wanted to go into the Marines and you had a buddy who'd gone in. Um, I want to ask kind of what it was like for you once you got to the recruiter's office. Like, how did that go for you?
Well, I knew my recruiter since I was 5. So it was he's like, you're joining the Marines. I even actually thought about the Army for a second. And he's like, hell no, you ain't going to the Army. He's like, you want to be in the varsity or the JV? I was like, well, I want to be in the varsity. He was like, well, you're going to be a Marine, damn it. And I was like, oh, I just wanted to just learn about it. He's like, no, you don't need to know anything about that. Get in here. Let's go. And so, he's like my older brother. And like I said, I was already really, my whole life was thinking about it. So I'm like, all right, let's go. And so I was 2 days after high school graduation, I was in Paris Island. So like immediately after high school.
Wow.
Yeah, all my friends were having graduation parties and I'm in recruit training. And so, yeah, it was bang bang, right after school, I went down.
Okay. So you didn't have, so they have the, oh, I can't think, the where you can go in a little early
Oh, the
and
delayed entry program?
thank you. Yep.
Yeah,
Words,
yeah.
they're hard
Actually,
today.
I was in the delayed entry program for a while. I think I joined, I can't remember which month it was now, but it definitely was my senior year.
Okay. All
I
right.
went and swore in. I took the ASVAB and all that. I went up there and swore in at MAPS. And pretty basic.
What did you sign on for your MOS?
That is a very interesting story because my recruiter, my brother-in-law, he's like, well, he became my brother-in-law. There's a story. He ended up marrying my sister. So there's T-shirts that say my recruiter dating my sister. That really happened. But he goes, "You want to be in business and everything?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, every Marine is a rifleman to begin with. Our cooks are riflemen, so you're going to go to Marine combat training. So why don't you do something that can benefit you when you get out?" And I'm like, I love my recruiter to death, but it was terrible advice because I ended up in admin school and I absolutely hated it. And my first contract was a reserve contract. So I wanted to go to school. I actually wanted to become an officer. So when I got into that school, I absolutely hated it. So much so when I went to my unit, I actually wanted to transfer to another unit to get into the infantry unit. And they let me join the infantry unit in the reserves at that point. And then after that, I wanted to go back to New York, and they basically said, "You got to be an admin. That's what you're going to be." And I told the Marine Corps, I said, "No, I'm not going to do it." And they said,
Oh,
"Son,
wow.
you don't tell the Marines what to do. The Marines tell you what to do." And I'm like, "Well, I'd rather go to the brig than be an admin." And they said, "Go home and think about it. You're going to, we're not going to put you in the brig, but you're going to lose all your rank. You're going to get kicked out of the Marines with a general discharge at best." So I said, "I want to be infantry or I don't want to do anything." And they're like, "You're stubborn. We're going to," so they disciplined me. They called me in, broke me down in rank all the way to being a private. And then by that point, I joined the metal band. And I was like, "I'm just going to rock and roll anyway. I'm going to go on the road and play in a band." And I just was a young, rebellious kid. I wanted to be infantry or nothing else was going to matter.
Okay.
And
All
so
right.
they processed me out, and I got initially a general discharge under other than honor. So 4 or 5 years later, I'm sitting there and it hits me out of nowhere. What the hell did I do? Like, I gave up on my country. I gave up on the Marines. I have a kid someday. I got to tell her dad's a quitter. Well, I ended up having a daughter, so I said her. But I was just like, wait a second, I got to fix this. So I called up the Marines. I'm like, "Hey, I'm a Marine back in the day. I want to join up again." And they're like, "Oh, no problem. Come on in. We'll dig up your paperwork." So long story short, they looked in my record book and said, "You either punched a general or smoked crack in the barracks. What'd you do? Because this reenlistment code, we can't do anything with you. Just go home. You're not getting back in." I'm like, "Well, we're in Iraq at this point. I want to help out." They're like, "It's not going to happen." So fought to get in, kept hanging up on me. Finally, I did 1 year in the Army Guard infantry out in California, got my honorable discharge, brought it back to the Marines. They said, "We don't care about this. Go home." So as fate would have it, I ran into an old buddy who was a major in the Marine Corps at that time, told him my story, and he says, "Those recruiters that are not picking up the phone, they work for me." So he goes, "Let's put together a package. It's a 1 in 1,000,000 chance, 1 in 1,000 chance. We'll send it to headquarters Marine Corps." I apologized. I wrote a letter. I told him that it was the biggest mistake of my life. I'll do anything to make it right. And the stars aligned, and it went down to the colonel in Washington, D.C., said, "All right, he's going to Iraq in 6 months. Tell him to to get his affairs in order. He's going to go back as a private. He's going to make it right. He's going to Iraq, in one of the worst places in Iraq. And it all happened. And I stayed in I went to Iraq and did another 3 years after that. Got all my rank back and my honorable discharge. So it was a blessing.
Oh my gosh. So I have, let's see if I can locate this. I have a photo here.
Sorry for the long-winded explanation.
No, that's just fine. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. And this is you in Iraq?
Yep. That's Ramadi, Iraq. Yep.
Okay. All right. You're very stoic.
Yeah.
Very serious. So, okay. Pat. So, did you do any kind of delayed entry with the
Did I?
Army?
Oh.
So when I signed my Army contract, it was a pretty short turnaround. I think my contract was signed and I shipped within about a week.
Goodness, you guys are probably like the earliest, from sign to ship date that I think I've ever heard.
Well, I
So-
already knew, like, I had already been going through the process with the Marine Corps. I was like ready, right? My family, like, they already knew kind of what I wanted to do, and it was, for me, it was just like, let's get after it.
Move it along.
Yep.
And for the both of you, and I'll let you guys figure out who wants to go first. My question for you guys is pertaining to now, Dan, you've done it twice. So your basic training and boot camp. What was it like for the two of you when you guys got to Paris Island and Pat, where did you ship
I was
from?
at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I was a combat engineer in the Army, so I went
Okay.
to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
What was it like for you both when you guys got to your destinations to go through your basic training and your boot camp?
Honestly, I loved basic training, right? I thought it was, for me, I fit right in. It was kind of like very, cut and dry for me, right? Everything is like performance based, and you're going to do X, Y, Z, and you're going to follow steps A, B, and C in that process. And if you do it right, then good for you. And if you do it wrong, then we're going to yell at you.
And you get to do it again.
Right. And like, we're going to do this until we get it right. You know what I mean? That sort of, and like, for me, it just made sense. Everything just kind of clicked for me when it was time. I remember at the end of basic training, we had just finished our combat engineer field training exercise. We're getting ready to turn in all of our gear. All the rifles are getting cleaned and inspected, sort of deal. And I'm standing in front of my drill sergeant while he's inspecting my rifle. He's looking at the rifle. He's looking at me, looking at the rifle, looking at me. He's like, Private Kimball, have I ever like smoked you individually, or like have you ever been like yelled at, or like, and I was like, no, drill sergeant, not at all. And the next time that my gear was getting inspected, I actually had a drill sergeant ask me, who are you and have you been here for the whole cycle?
So you just kind of, stayed in the background and just kept your head down.
I was never last, late, light, or lost. And I always had a clean shave, and I made my bed real neat. So that's fine.
So for you, discipline and a real guidance on what you needed to do, what goals they had for you, that benefited you mentally.
Yeah, structure is good for me. If you just tell me what to do, I will do it. I will make it happen.
Excellent. So Dan, you step on those yellow footprints for the first time. What's going through your head?
Oh, I only had to go to boot camp once.
Oh, they didn't make you do it again?
No, I didn't have to go to recruit training again. But actually, a funny story we could circle back to. Pat and I are both going back to recruit training. Me for the second time, him for the first time. The Marines are flying both of us down as part of our mission.
I finally get to go to Paris Island.
We're going to Paris Island for 4 days. We're going to get smoked. So we're going to boot camp in a week. So we're both getting our affairs in our 40s.
Oh,
In our 40s. Yeah, I'm pushing 50.
that's
He's 42.
crazy. I definitely care to hear. I definitely want to hear about this. So, but yes, we'll make sure we circle back
So
for that because that's
yeah.
interesting. So, but your time, the very first time you stepped on those yellow footprints, what was going through your head once you got off that bus?
The interesting thing about me and the yellow footprints is I actually left from a recruiting station where there was like a thunderstorm where the flights couldn't go out. So me and a couple other guys were actually a day or two late to receiving. So they just walked us in. I didn't have to deal with any of the footprints. I kind of feel robbed. I guess I'm going to tell the Marine Corps to put us on the footprints when we get there because I didn't get a chance to do it the first time. Because they're just kind of like, who are these strangers? Mr. Invisible.
Interestingly, when my youngest Marine graduated, and so there was family day, and he took us around, and saw the yellow footprints, and then the hatch, double doors. I wanted so badly to stand on them, but I'm like, no, this is not you. That No, you cannot do that. It's so sacred, right? But I wanted to almost see if I could feel the history, kind of
For
coming
sure.
up. Because so many people have just been, standing on those, and just have completely changed history. So I just think it was amazing, but I restrained myself. But I definitely got photos. So had to get photos of all of them lined up. The footprints.
Absolutely. Well, it was still a shock nonetheless. Receiving at first, I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. I mean, just kind of chilling, waiting around. Like, this is Marine Corps boot camp. It's so bad, kind of the false sense of security during receiving, even though it was really intense. Even just, I remember how crazy it got, even trying to get drug tested, providing a urine sample. Like, drill instructors came in yelling on command for you to fill the cup. And I just remember everyone was stressing out. They're making us drink canteens of water so badly the guys started throwing up because they were just jamming, throwing water back.
Oh,
But
yeah.
couldn't deal with the drill instructor yelling at them. So like, even that's when I started realizing that maybe this is going to be pretty intense, just the way they're even treating that. And then all of a sudden the double doors open, and it was like a tornado meets a hurricane meets a volcano. And I was like, holy, like, what the hell is this? It was like just being blasted. And it was just, it was chaos. And it was the most intense thing I think I've ever been a part of. Is interesting.
Controlled chaos.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I'm like, these guys look like maniac comedians.
Well, they think they're comedians.
They're funny as, some of the funniest things I've ever heard from drill instructors, for sure.
That's great. So did either of you? I kind of want to go back just a little bit. Your moms and dads, however, did any of your parents, like, did you tell them prior to you signing that that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I told my mom early.
And
My mom really,
how did your parents react?
kind of. They were proud, but kind of, just, I wouldn't say indifferent, but just mom was just worried about, I hope you don't go to war, or,
Moms
just
worry
that
a
whole
lot.
thing. Yeah, just the common, I think, concerns. And we work with a lot of, we'll get into that later. We work with a lot of kids going in now and parents. And so it's interesting because brings me back to listening to my mother and thinking about parents and how they feel about the kids going in. So
Yeah.
it was pretty basic. Nothing too hot or cold, but just concern for sure.
Yeah.
So we were already at war when I enlisted. I enlisted in like 2006. So we were already at war. So I knew, like, I'm going to Iraq or Afghanistan, like, one way or another. But I was like 22, right? I had a wife and two kids. She, like, I didn't care about any of that. I just wanted to take care of my family. I wasn't worried about any of that other shit.
How did your wife handle the fact that that's what you wanted to do?
I mean, my wife has always been very supportive of, however, like I choose to, take care of I've made a commitment to take care of her and the family in certain ways. And as long as I, fulfill those obligations, she's always been more than happy to, do more than her share for the family to like keep everything kind of together.
That's
She's a very
wonderful.
unselfish person. And so, no matter what it was, when I was in the Army, I told her that I wanted to go to Special Forces assessment and selection. And I spent some time, getting ready for that. And when it was time for me to go to selection, she had just had a baby sort of deal. And I was thinking, oh man, maybe I better take like a later school date or whatever. And my chain of command was like, why is it that your wife is fine and she's telling you to go, and you're saying you need to be like, do you want to go and do this, or like, it's just,
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, all right, like she's got it under control, sort of deal. So I can go and do whatever I have to do.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely
very important to
wonderful.
me.
Yeah, 100%. To have a spouse, that, stands behind you or beside you, and encourage you to continue.
To better myself,
And
yeah, for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Okay. So my husband, speaking of drill instructors, my husband wants me to tell you a story
Sure.
that yes, my run-in, not so much run-in, but my conversation with a drill instructor who happened to be my youngest Marines drill instructor, and it was family night, and so we had dinner with the drill instructors, and of course, the newly pinned Marines, they did not get to join, so it's just the parents and relatives, whoever came to were going to the graduation the following day, so and the drill instructors would come talk about your kid and, this and that. So, yeah, my husband because I love to shoot. It's something I've always done. We've taught our kids since they were 2. They've been holding rifles since they were 2, and I'm not even kidding. I have photos to prove it. Their earmuffs were larger than their heads.
Oh yeah,
However,
that age, sure.
yeah. So I had just gone, well, not long before I think we went to Paris Island for the graduation. We had gone out to 1,000-yard range, and I wanted to stretch. I've got a rifle, and I wanted to stretch it out because I haven't been able to get that far out. So anyway, I did well, and my husband had videoed all of this, and so it's all electronic, which is nice. So that 1,000-yard, it's all electronic, and it comes back on right at you on a little tablet, so you
Sure.
can see exactly where you're at, and the whole 9 yards. So anyway, I did well, and so he showed it to the drill instructor, because of course, my son shot expert, and he's like, thought that was pretty cool. He was like really surprised how well I did, and then I guess he went back after dinner. This drill instructor went back to the barracks and calls out asking for my son. Like, which one of you is, right? I
Right.
mean, like he's like, so according to my son, unbeknownst to him that this had happened, the drill instructor turns around and tells him that his mother is a badass.
There you,
Because
there you go.
I know. And he's like, wait, which one's your son? I swear, I don't remember ever seeing him because he was kind of the same way, with the exception of at one point, he actually was a platoon leader. So, it was like, how do you not know him?
Right.
But, they had several of them, over the course of their 13 weeks. But so anyway, there you go. That was the story. But um, I think we had gotten on the subject of the fact that we all liked, shooting, and that the kids have been shooting at such a young age. So,
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
um, I digress. So, okay. All right. So, yes, he says 4.58. MOA at 1,000 yards, 9 shots. Thank you very much.
That's outstanding.
I mean, I love it. I enjoy it. Just something
Pat's our marksmanship director for
no
American
kidding.
Warrior.
Yeah, we could get down that. We could get down that rabbit hole a long way.
Oh, see, we'll have to definitely get, connect more because
we'll do that offline.
yeah, exactly. Okay. So moving on, funny stories. I want to hear if you guys have any funny stories during your time at basic and boot camp.
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, just one-liners. I remember we had one drill instructor Sergeant McCullough, who looked like Jim Carrey on steroids. And he was telling us how he wasn't going to be caught dead at the grenade range with us with platoon 1197 because 70%, hell, 90% of us had the athletic ability of Richard Ethan Simmons. So he said that he wasn't going to be anywhere around the grenade range. He also, I think there's a few of the drill instructors. Unfortunately, we had one recruit who thought he could take himself out by drinking a bunch of peroxide. And he got sick.
No. Yeah.
And so this recruit said that someone in the platoon tried to poison him. So the drill instructor, they were going to have fun with this. They're like, oh, 97, you guys effed up this time. We knew you couldn't drill. We know you can't march. We know you can't do anything right. But we didn't know you're all a bunch of freaking killers, murderers. So he's like, you're all going to the break for life. And we're like, what? They sold this the whole afternoon. Like, oh, we're going to play games. The MPs are coming. You're all going to the break. We're going to write letters home that you guys tried to kill your fellow recruit. We're like, don't do this, Instructor. We didn't try to poison him. And they just had fun with this all day. Then at the end, they let us know that they were just messing with us. And this one recruit was going to deal with it. But we thought we were going to the break. We didn't think anyone was going to believe us. I mean, it was being, looking back at it, it was pretty gullible, but you don't know any better at that time.
Well, right. I mean, because they're your superiors. They're the ones you expecting to lead and trust and all of that, right? So
yeah, they said there's going to be a island-wide investigation. All this nonsense.
Wow. Oh my God.
It's pretty funny.
That is crazy. That would, definitely something that you would that you would remember.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Pat, how about yourself?
I don't have that many fun stories from basic, but I remember my platoon in basic. We were, for whatever reason, we were just always in trouble for silly shit all the time. And I remember there were various times when we would go from when you first start, you're in red phase, and then you go into white phase, and then you go into blue phase, and then eventually it's black phase, and then gold phase is like the end of basic training. And I remember we were in black phase, which is when you've completed basic training, you're in AIT, you're almost like MOS qualified, and you're getting ready to go out into the field for your final field training exercise, and then you enter like gold phase. And even though we were supposed to be earning more privileges as far as like weekend passes and being able to get a little bit more freedom in the company area when we weren't on duty time or whatever, we were just always in trouble for contraband in the barracks. There was always people with dip or whatever, or cigarettes, or people would steal fatty cakes from the defect or the dining facility or whatever. So we ended up at one point we were supposed to be in blue phase near the end of basic training going into AIT. We ended up in red phase, and then we ended up with half a guidon stick. So they unscrewed the top of the guidon. We didn't even have a flag. We rated nothing. We were just holding up half a guidon stick at all the other companies when they were walking past us.
Oh my God!
Call cadence when other companies would walk by. We would have to just listen to them call cadence. We were a mess.
Oh wow!
That's funny. We were a misfit platoon too because for some reason they gave us the 20 piece PCP recruits, the pork chop platoon. Basically, you went to pork chop
Okay.
platoon if you were overweight. You had the
Yep.
stripes across your shirt, which meant basically no pastry for you at all. No
Yep.
pastry.
Yep.
So they just took this already dysfunctional platoon and just weighted it down with, Marine Corps fat bodies. I mean, that's just what the Marine Corps calls those
Yeah.
recruits. So we were slow and I mean just nasty for a while. But then we got the boots locked in and started looking like an actual platoon by graduation. But yeah,
Yeah.
we were way down.
That's always tough though, because you kind of got to jump in and work as a team or kind of early on to help everybody move forward together.
Oh yeah.
That was really big. That was something that really started to become important the farther you got into basic training. Is like everything that we do, we succeed as a team and we fail as a team. So if your
Yeah.
buddy isn't squared away, that's on you, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, it's not like about the individual anymore. Now it's about, hey, we're either picking each other up or we're failing together.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Interesting. All right. So, Dan, with you, once you graduated, we kind of talked about that. You graduated, you went on to AIT or
Yeah, I went to Marine MCT, Marine Combat Training at that time.
yeah.
That's what it was called. Yeah, and then right into the admin school, which I did not like.
Hey, shout out Kirk. Welcome. Thank you. So, fellow Marine out there, Kirk Bradley.
Oh, nice.
So, yes, great guy. So he goes by Tadpole. That's his call sign is Tadpole. So he's
Awesome. Be great to meet him.
yeah, yeah. So appreciate him jumping in. And okay. Um, what about you, Pat, as far as you went through, you did your AIT, and
right.
then where did you go once you finished that?
So, graduated from AIT in June of 2006. I went home on 2 weeks of leave, and I had an extra couple of weeks at home. I was home for hometown recruiting assistance. My
Okay.
recruiter was able to get me an extra like week or two back at home, and then so I did that, and then I reported to Fort Riley, Kansas, in July of 2006, and I was at the first replacement battalion at Fort Riley for probably a week in processing to base, and then you go down to the basement of this one building up on Custer. I'm sorry, on Main Post. Not even on Main Post. I'm messing up. Doesn't matter where it is, but it's near the Custer Museum on Fort Riley. And you go down into the basement there, and this lady inside of the window, she holds up two different patches. Now, the first patch she holds up is 1st Infantry Division, the big red one. And the second patch that she held up was 1st Armored Division, Old Ironsides. So she says, you can go to 1st Infantry Division or you can go to 1st Armored Division. And I said, well, what difference does that make to me? Because they both have combat engineer battalions in their, in either division. There's going to be a combat engineer battalion waiting for me. And I said, what's the difference for me? She said, well, the 1st ID is deploying in September of this year, and the 1st AD is deploying in February of next year. And I said, well, give me 1st Infantry, because I wanted to go on my first deployment like right. So
As soon
she
as you
gave me the
could.
first. Yep. So she gave me the 1st ID patch, and I got orders to go to 1st Engineer Battalion, 1st Engineer Battalion, and 1st ID. And I called my wife and I told her that I was deploying in September.
And she was hanging in there, taking care of the kids.
She's just at home in New York, like waiting for me to call her and tell her that there's housing on base so she can finally like move, to our duty station. And I was like, no, you're gonna sit tight. I'm gonna be a geographical bachelor for a couple of months. I'm gonna live in the barracks with the single soldiers, and you're gonna stay with the family. And in a couple of months' time, I'm gonna go down range on a 15-month deployment. So I'll get some housing for you when I get back.
Which, in the really does make sense, because then she's able to have families, there for
For me, it
support.
was the only way, right? Because what am I going to do? I'm going to move her out to Fort Riley for a couple of months. She's going to be here, and we're going to have, barely any time together anyhow. Because I'm getting, we're on this pre-deployment kind of workup, getting ready to go. And then you go on your deployment, and she's just by herself. Or, I didn't really know much about the military life and the FRG and the family culture inside of the unit or how any of that stuff was going to go.
Right.
So I was like, well, I already know what you have, as far as like a structure for you at home. So why don't you just do that and I'll just do this for a little while.
And I'm assuming from everything I'm hearing, it went pretty well.
Yeah, no, we've been married for 20 years this August, and all's well that ends well, sort of deal. So we didn't get a whole lot of family. We didn't get a whole lot of time together. From the time I enlisted in February until December of 2007. I think we were only together for about 6 weeks that whole almost 2-year period. From between me going to basic training and then coming home on leave and then going down range right away and then coming home on leave for a couple weeks from that and then being gone for a full 12 months in between times. I think we added up one time. We had about 6 or 7 weeks of like family togetherness for like in that first like 22-month stretch.
Sounds like your wife is an absolute rock star, especially,
100%.
raising kids, and that's awesome. That's awesome.
Couldn't have done any of it without us.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, Dan, for you, so you end up obviously the initial dishonorable, or other than dishonorable.
The general under other than honorable. Yeah.
Yes. And then
Shipper status.
So when you do get back to the Marine Corps, how old were you?
I got back in June of 2005, and I just turned 30 years old when I got back in. But I was actually in better shape at 30 than I was at 19.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
I can. My scores were higher, and I was in much better shape.
Yeah. And you said that at that point you went in as infantry and then ended up going right into Iraq.
Yeah, it was actually, I attached to a artillery unit, but it was at that time a lot of the Marine units were starting to take over the it's like an MP battalion where we ran a detention center, did convoy security, transporting Iraqi insurgents to different prisons, and also training Iraqis in military to be military and police. So a lot of like convoys, a lot of training, and that was like the era of the IED and everything and things like that. And so that's basically what we had to deal with. We were there during the occupation, not the invasion.
Yeah. And so I know, a lot of times you have your initial MOS that you sign up for. So like our oldest Marine veteran signed up, and he was Army National Guard, and he was a mechanic. And then when he got over to Iraq during OEF, ended up as route clearance.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So,
doing all
so
kinds
is
of different billets. Yeah.
Yeah. So is same thing for you guys, I'm assuming? Did you hold true to your initial MOS?
Yeah, I mean, we were really doing, there was infantry units that were doing the same job. I mean, here's an artillery unit doing convoys, and they weren't even near a cannon. So it's like it was just kind of wherever it was needed. I mean, there were National Guard units doing room clearing and house clearing and things like that. And Marines are running prisons. It also was unfortunately right after Abu Ghraib, where the Army had an unfortunate situation. So I think it was kind of a way to keep peace in ways too.
Yeah.
Try to get Marines taking over some of those. And it was strange how they were divvying up the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And, hopefully, they've learned and tried to get things a little bit more set and organized, for
Yeah,
future.
because I don't think they had enough NPs to like run the detention stuff and all the convoy work. And
So it was
so,
kind of a low density MLS
yeah,
in the Army.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's just
Excellent.
kind of wherever they could take Marines from different units to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so our oldest went from, he kind of had an interesting situation because he was Army Reserve, was deployed twice to Iraq as route clearance, came back, decided he wanted to go full time. And the Army recruiter said, "Oh, we don't have any openings for that, but we can put you in this and do this." And he's like, "No, I want infantry." You know how it goes, right? They
Oh
had
yeah.
quotas. So
Oh
they
yeah.
filled up their infantry. They needed to fill up all the other specialty stuff. So he's like, "Look, if you can't put me infantry, I'm going next door to the Marine Corps." And he's like, "No, you won't do that." And sure enough, he got up, walked next door to the Marine Corps, and in fact, the recruiter followed him out and right into the Marine Corps office. Says, "Hey, look, I want to go into the infantry. Can you help me do this?" The Marine Corps said, "Yep, no problem." Okay.
Oh yeah.
So on the Army side, I was a combat engineer. So route clearance was the mission, both deployments that I went on, and that's what we did. So
Yeah, yeah.
that was my
And
job.
he was a mechanic. I mean, that was his thing was mechanic.
Yeah, our
And
mechanics had to go. Like we, every swinging Richard in my company has a combat action badge, and we have like 80% Purple Hearts, right? Because all of our mechanics went, like, we had a mechanic on every patrol in case we had some sort of like mobility kill in one of our vehicles and we had to, cage the air brakes or whatever. We would always have mechanics with us. We would always have the medics with us. So our mechanics got ran ragged doing route clearance. And you felt bad for them sometimes because they really should have been just kind of turning wrenches. But honestly, like, we needed the bodies.
right, right.
So, it just was what it was, sort of deal. But yeah,
So after you got to, you did how many tours did you do, Pat, over there?
I did too.
2? And
Yeah.
then what did you do after that?
So after my second deployment, I was still in the Army for probably almost a year and a half, and I was a platoon sergeant in my company. Um, and so I wanted to stay in. I was thinking about potentially re-enlisting. Actually went to the promotion board, and I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough retainability to get promoted from sergeant to staff sergeant. And the sergeant major looked at me in the promotion board and he was like, "Hey, Sergeant Kimball, I see you don't have enough retainability for me to recommend promotion, but the retention NCO is right down the hall. So if you want to go over there and sign an extension just through the Afghanistan deployment, I can recommend you for staff sergeant. You can probably come back as a sergeant first class." or start putting your packet together. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, Sergeant Major. Unfortunately, I already made some I made some commitments to the family. It was time for me to go." So, but yeah,
I've heard that actually from a couple different guests that I've had, something very similar to that.
yeah,
You
I
know.
mean, I was pretty good at my job. I really enjoyed it, and I would have loved to stay longer. And they dangled the carrot. And if I hadn't have already kind of made some promises, I probably would have stayed a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to go. So.
Yeah. So Jason says, for you, Pat, that was about the same time our son Killian was there. He was in the Montana National Guard, and that you guys might have run into each other
Oh,
at some
cool.
point.
Yeah, we were up in Mosul from September 2006 was when we left on my first deployment until December of 2007.
I'd have to go back and take a look at his info and see, because I don't remember right off. Um, so I'd have to go back and look and see. But I
Yeah,
think it was right around that time.
a lot of people listening out there might remember the call sign Trailblazer Red if they were ever assigned to Multinational Division North up there. And
Trailblazer Red.
Yep, OIF 0608.
I'm writing this down here. I'll have to ask him. So,
Trailblazer Red was Alpha Company first engine advertising.
pretty cool. I just remember when I was signing up for the VFW auxiliary, just seeing because he had just recently had separated from the Marine Corps, so I just remember seeing his information, as
Yeah.
far as the times and stuff. So, but I couldn't remember. I couldn't tell you right off, but I'll have to ask him and see because that would be really interesting.
Yeah, that was a great time to be fighting a war.
So Jim has a question, and that is, did you ever meet Mitchell West? And I'm assuming that's going to be for you, Pat. He says he was clearance for most of his career, 30-year Army vet, lieutenant colonel.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
He wanted to know if you've ever met Mitchell West.
Mitchell West. Name doesn't ring a bell.
Clearance. He was clearance for most of his career, 30-year Army vet, lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, I would have to know what unit he served in. Potentially that would be helpful, but the name West doesn't really do much for me. I'm sorry.
There you go. Okay. And so you separate from the Army.
Yeah.
And you're back home. So Dan, when you join back in, you're 30, you're in your
Yep.
30s.
Yep.
And did or did not have to go through MCT again?
No, I didn't have to go to recruit training again. They sent me right down to 29 Palms to begin training in June, and we left for Iraq for Ramadi in September.
Okay.
And we were there till April. And then at that time, I was living out in Los Angeles, and I had a music academy that was teaching young kids how to play instruments, building bands, getting them concerts, doing music. It's always been music in the military. It's been my whole life. So
That's amazing.
I couldn't. I mean, it's a dream to be able to do what we do here today. So yeah, then when I got back from Ramadi, Iraq, I ended up joining this reserve unit after we stayed active for a couple more months when we got back into the country. And I re-upped to stay on for a little bit longer. And I was actually going to go to Iraq again with an infantry unit that was going to be doing, basically going house to house and getting insurgents out. The other side of the coin, instead of being the ones receiving them, we were going to be a part of. And I thought about it, and I wanted to do it again and go back, but I just built up my music academy again, and I met a girl that we ended up getting engaged, and I was like, if I go back again, I might as well stay. Like, it was getting to that point where I made everything right to myself. I was in a non-obligated contract with the Marines at that point. I was basically just kind of drilling, and it was up in the air, go back into active duty or just kind of go back into civilian life and do the music academy. And it was a very, very, very tough decision.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to go back with that unit. I wanted to do that job. And so it was one of those where I'm still kind of like, did I do the right thing? But, I think in the long run I did. So I stayed in the reserves for another 2 years. And then just simply got out in 2009. And and then got into the work that we're doing with the military now, shortly after.
Excellent. So the next question for you guys is, when you knew you were going to separate, did the military, the Army for you, Pat, and the Marine Corps for you, Dan, did either of you guys receive any kind of resources on transitioning back into civilian life?
Let's see.
I mean, so when I was getting ready to kind of leave the Army, I went through the ordinary transition, all the different briefings and stuff like that. I didn't really have like a plan set in stone for how I was going to kind of approach the transition. Initially, I wanted to get out and just kind of collect unemployment for a little while and go to school, kind of use the GI Bill. And I couldn't do it, honestly. Like, I couldn't just go to school and not be working. I ended up taking a job at UPS. I took like a part-time job unloading trailers at UPS early in the morning because I needed to have health insurance. Honestly, the driving force for me was I had a wife, and at that time, I had all three of my sons, and everybody needs health insurance, right? Except for me, because I got my Purple Heart and I had a disability rating, so I have health care through the VA. I'm fine, but they needed, they needed me to provide the health insurance piece. So I started down a path to go to school and everything, and I realized that that wasn't going to cut it. So I ended up taking a job part-time with UPS, and I did that for like 10 years. Now I'm doing something else, but
yeah. And Dan, what about you?
And sorry, I was just checking.
So
What was the question again?
the question is, when you decided you wanted to separate and started going through that process, did the Marine Corps provide you with resources on transitioning back into civilian life? Did you already have a plan in place of what you wanted to do?
Oh, well, I jumped when I got out, and I jumped right back into the music academy, and I built it back up. So I was kind of doing that for work. And then I just found out, though, my friend was like, "You are good for benefits in the VA, your health insurance. You can go," and I didn't know what was available to me.
Yeah,
they don't have any
yeah.
briefings like that in the Marine Corps, like separating or whatever.
They did like I skipped most of them. They did like a basic, "Hey, are you healthy in your mind and body?" And we all said yes. If we should have or not, but and then it was just kind of, we were processing out. There wasn't much about the VA at that point. So finally, an older Marine that was in during the 80s was like, "Let's go to the VA, man, and get our benefits." I'm like, benefits? I didn't know, so I went.
He was in the 80s, and he's just now going into
Yeah, he just
Wow.
I have an uncle who's like 80 something years old. He came to one of our events, and we got him into the VA's truck for his benefits in his 80s.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Crazy. World War II.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Oh yeah. Julio's studio closes here in a few minutes. I don't know how much. I just want to make sure that we don't cut you short, or
Okay.
So we'll go some.
yeah, or another 10 minutes. Is that work for you?
We can wrap up in 10.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So let's ask this question. I want to know what you guys are doing now.
Perfect. Well, this is another why it's such an honor to have this man on today with me, because American Warrior, it really kind of, the seeds started when I started running prospects up to the Hollywood sign in Los Angeles that were kind of out of shape. I would do like martial arts with them and run them up the hill.
Oh, wow.
And then recruiters at that time, though, they were just like, "Oh, that's cool, but yeah, we really don't need your help. It's a different time." But I was like, "Well, I'm here in case you need me." And so I just knew something was calling me to think about helping these kids. And then we started doing music festivals in Los Angeles for veterans, and all the veterans would come for free. We get all the different veteran groups, from scuba diving to hunting trips to nature trips for veterans, and started doing the music and the training. And then we had a group ask us to do the events in New York. So come all the way from the West Coast and do them in New York. And so we started getting into local businesses, and the Firing Pin kept popping up as a company that we should reach out to that would support us.
That's an interesting name.
Yeah, and that's where I met Pat. And I said, "Damn, we just started through the Firing Pin." Pat was helping. I just got my handgun too, and I needed serious help. And Pat was my handgun instructor, and then we would take the AR-15 out as well. So Pat, I just loved the way he was teaching. And so I was telling him about the program. So he and I just ended up one day taking this white box of like, it looked like a donut box, but it had our promotional items in it. And we walked in and they're like, what are you guys bringing donuts? So we walked into the recruiting station and just said, we're here to help. Like, we got a tutoring program. We want to help you get your kids qualified. We can teach them ASVAB tutoring, get them into fitness.
Oh, that's awesome. There's so many kids that need that.
Oh, 5 to 10 calls a day we get now, if not more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Pat and I, we just started, building this and doing marksmanship events with the Marine Corps and the Army. And it's morphing into this thing where we're now meeting the commanding general of Marine Corps recruiting. Where it's moving, the Marine Corps and the Army across the country are calling us from different states. Kids are calling us. We're tutoring every day. We just got an ASVAB director, and Pat and I are talking about boosting the marksmanship program, the martial arts program, the fitness program. We got an aviation department now, a special forces department we're building.
Wow.
And I think that we're aiming to be the bridge between a prospect's front door and the recruiting station. And it's taking off and starting to grow. So I'll let Pat kind of piggyback off of that, but it's exciting to be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the way that Dan kind of approached me with it was like, hey, we have this program where, first of all, Dan's a veteran, obviously. He's very passionate about not only military service, as a concept, but also the future, right? And how are we as a nation going to be able to help the recruiters meet their numbers with recruits that, are going to be able to do the job the right way, right? Stop lowering standards kind of deal, and help the recruits kind of meet the standards as they kind of exist, right? So the fitness side, getting them ready to go and take their initial entry fitness test for whichever branch of service, that's a big deal. Getting them academically qualified through the ASVAB program so that they can go and pass the standardized test so that we can help them get into the right career management field, right? Giving them, like Dan said, the martial arts program and the marksmanship program as kind of little incentives to help them, not only stay with the program and meet the objectives that we set, but also to keep them, engaged and give them something a little bit to look forward to, sort of deal. But also for us, right, as the veterans who have already kind of been there and done that, it's nice for us to be able to be involved with the recruiters and kind of help them with some of the things that they, need, but can't necessarily do them. So there's only so many hours in a day, sort of deal, and they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to kind of take all these recruits and give them all of these individual pieces that they might need to help them to be successful, right? And so we don't want those young people to fall through the cracks. If there's something that we can do potentially to help them out. So, those are some of the things that we're focused on with the program. And on the marksmanship side, for me, it's just nice to be able to be involved and stay current and, be able to contribute something to the future of this country.
Well, I think that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I want to thank both of you for taking the time to come on the show and have a conversation, share about your time in the military, the good, the bad, as well as, what you're up to today and continuing to serve our country and help, our young military to get where they need to be. So.
Absolutely. We had a call on the way here, a 16-year-old out in Southern California, and his mother said he wants to go in the Army, and his mother said she'll sign papers when he's 17. So otherwise he has to wait till he's 18. Mm-hmm. I understand it's still like that. So, but she calls me and she says, I'll sign the paperwork under one condition. He doesn't go infantry. So the young man calls me today and I'm like, what job do you want to do? He goes, supply and infantry. And I'm like, supplies what mom wants, infantry is what you want. He goes, yes, yes, sir. He's like, come on, sir, can I speak for you? I'm like, speak freely, man. Go ahead. He goes, you know, I don't want to be supply. I want to be in the infantry. I'm like, but you're 16. And I said, we can talk with mom. We can have Army infantry veterans and Pat and all the veterans we have talk to him about it. But it's just all kinds of things with these kids that we're helping them with mentorship. And I'm like, are you okay with waiting to 18 if mom doesn't want to sign? And he's like, no, I got to go at 17. So it's just kind of guiding them. You know, it's not just even teaching them about the ASVAB and fitness. I'll get a call from a prospect. Oh, I'm in trouble. I got caught driving without a license. And I'm afraid to call my recruiter. We got you. Call our chaplain. You're going through some stuff in life. Now we have like a mindset crew and chaplains on our team to help these kids. I can't study because my mom's battling cancer. It's more a mentorship and like big brother, big sister with these kids.
That's
and they
amazing.
become like little brothers and sisters. So it's really it's not even work at all. It's like a calling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing what you guys are doing. I want to keep in touch with you both, you know, and hear kind of how things are going and milestones that you're meeting as you get there, and keep me informed on what you guys are up to, because I do like to put that out there for anybody who's, you know, listening and, you know, to check
So,
things out. So
thank you so much for having us on today.
We're going down to
it
PSL in a couple of
Oh yeah.
So we
Next
should.
week, right? Next
It's like the
Tuesday.
first and the fourth.
Yeah.
First and the
We
fourth.
have Pat and I are going to boot camp, and we're gonna have a post boot camp podcast
are,
here with Julio.
yes. Are you going to be posting that out there like on Facebook or anything?
They asked us for our social media, so I think they're
Yeah.
going to be like taking pictures of us looking like weirdos out there.
I'm excited. So yeah, so we'll make sure that, you know, we can post that out there, and I'll post it out on my channel as well. So really excited. And yes, please let me know how things are going. I'm sure everybody would love to hear it. And especially, you know, as or older gentlemen, how it goes for you during boot all over again. For the you know,
Yes.
If some of these young guys can do it, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, we're salty old veterans, but we're staying in the fight.
well, now you know how it's done though, right? So you
Yes,
got a
ma'am.
little edge up.
Oh
So
yeah.
well, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you both, and thank you so very much for sticking with
Thanks
me
for
during all the
inviting me.
little hiccups and
Uh,
technical stuff. So,
No,
Julio, thank you very much.
have a
Thank
great
you,
night.
Carly.
Thanks, everybody.
You guys have a great one, and thank you again.
You
Um,
too.
for
Thank you.
everybody else in the chats, y'all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week, and we will see you again next Sunday right here on Conversations with a Vet. And in the meantime, everybody be safe.